Welcome to the Live Beyond podcast. My name is McFarland Muledi, and on my right-hand side, I've got Langa Lloyd Marlow, the coach. How are you?
How are you doing? Are you well?
I'm well. Can't complain.
Good. Thank you. You're looking forward to today's conversation. Our guest is very interesting.
Yes, I am. I'm excited about...
guest of a different kind.
Yes.
Yeah.
We always speak about ordinary people that do extraordinary things, and people that live beyond. And being a doctor, I think this is almost where that's the last stop, right? You know that things going south from there. If you're having to see a doctor, you know things are going south. So these are lifesavers and people that ideally, try and sometimes take us out that rut that we find ourselves in. Just say, stop doing this, you will die.
Yes. Yeah. So today we have the honor of having Dr. Sharon Nyatsanza with us. Welcome. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me.
And it's a real honor having you here. We're very excited about today's conversation, right? Looking forward to talking to Dr. Sharon about health in general. Her work, Dr. Nyatsanza is a qualified by profession. You're an advocate.
He's a lawyer by profession.
Right. And you've gone on to do a doctorate, and you currently doing a lot of work and a lot of you operate a lot in the advocacy space, specifically advocating against smoking, specifically as it relates to health and access to smoking by children. But before we get to that, can you tell us a bit about yourself, your history? Who is Dr. Sharon Nyatsanza and where is she from?
Yeah, so I'm just a normal girl. That's what other people would say. So Sharon was born in Zimbabwe in the 1980s. That's why I was raised there. I went for my primary high school in Zimbabwe. And then I came to SA around 2007 to do my first degree in law.
Right.
Down in the Eastern Cape.
Right.
So I was set to practice and to do law. That's what lawyers go to school to do anyway. They want to be in the law.
Which universities did you go to in the Eastern Cape?
Yes, I went to Fort Hare.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The famous Fort Hare.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Famous Fort Hare.
Right.
I think that's where most people President Mbeki,
yes,
President Mugabe. That's where they really attained their first degree.
Yes.
My mom went to
Fort Hare.
It's a very it's a very historical institution. I think even Walter Sisulu might have been there. So a lot of the sort of ANC alumni that went to university were in Fort Hare, especially from the Eastern Cape. Yeah.
Definitely. So so that's where I undertook my undergrad degree and also my master's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At University of Fort Hare. Yes.
Why law? So what was it then? What was that? Was it a BA in law?
It's a bachelor in law, so LLB.
Oh, LLB. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And why law? So I think when back then you either were supposed to be a lawyer, a doctor, or an accountant. Yeah. Something like that.
Yes.
And obviously I didn't like numbers, so law was my default. And I think I actually was more of a linguistic student, a lot of reading.
Yeah.
So I definitely always wanted to be a lawyer since around 5. So I'm glad that I did.
Yeah.
Also, managed to live that dream.
Right. And then from Fort Hare?
Yeah.
So you did your 3-year degree?
4 years. The 4-year degree. 4 year was.
Did you complete it in the specified time, or did you take longer, like McFarlane and I, hanging around at school and fooling around?
And I didn't have that privilege because I was on scholarship.
Right. Yeah.
So then you had to do it in 4 years, and then 4 years. That's it. You didn't have the privilege of failing, because if you fail, no one pays for the other years as well. So
So you did it in record time. Did you learn any Xhosa while you were there?
I kind of did, but
Yeah,
You have to.
and yet it. It was
The courses wouldn't let you off without knowing.
yes, but also I think in the Eastern Cape it's like one language, so you actually learn easily.
Yeah.
So and I had a lot of Xhosa friends, so and I worked with them as well. So I ended up just speaking the language.
Yeah.
But as soon as you move to Joburg, I don't even know how many languages are being spoken here. Someone greets you in Zulu, someone they reply in Sotho. So it's difficult for you to catch the vibe in Joburg.
Yeah.
And because I haven't been speaking Xhosa for so long, it kind of your tongue just
You lost it, yeah.
I'm just losing it. But I do actually. You can't speak about me. In Xhosa, I'll definitely hear that, and I always regard Eastern Cape as my home. Yeah.
Can you hear Sesotho?
It depends. Maybe you must try it, and then
Maybe we can switch. We can switch to Sesotho every now and again.
And see, plus he comes here with the PhDs and a masters and law, and I was in the US.
yeah.
Oh, okay. And then
You also had a stint overseas, though. I think you in the USA. You also went to Switzerland. What was that all about?
So that was during my PhD. So I then moved to Wits Law School, where I was doing my PhD. And part of that as well was a visiting scholar for the University of Bern in Switzerland and also Harvard Law School in the US. So that was really just part of my PhD program.
Yeah.
It was kind of an opportunity to kind of have a more diverse view at the studies that I was looking at. And also you go under the mentorship of different professors from these different schools. So it kind of enriches your learning process, because the PhD really is not about being intelligent. They don't teach you to be intelligent. Actually, I was never the A student. I always tell a funny story that I was once last in school in grade 2. So I was never really the A student, primary, high school.
Yeah.
So it's not about that. It's more, they are teaching you more, for me, the thinking process, the grueling. That really is what it's about.
Yeah.
Yes, you do end up with like one topic, one thesis, but you read so much more than that.
Right. Yeah.
So I think it's really more of a thinking degree than anything else.
Right. And then so where did you grow up before you came to?
I grew up in Mutare and Harare, which is the main capital. So that's where I grew up. I'm the first in a family of 6, 5 girls and 1 last boy. That's really where I grew up, where I spent most of my life, where I hope to spend most of my life as well.
Are you hoping to go back home?
Yes, I was.
Why?
The things that I do here, very impactful, very important. But I always feel like it's also missing where I come from. And
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
What are your fondest? I mean, everybody almost like reminisces about Zimbabwe, right? What are some of your fondest memories about your country?
There's so many. I probably would be almost like, my mom was a teacher, so my fondest moment was month end. When you go to town, eat KFC as a child.
Yeah.
Go to a zoo, a play center. Because both my parents are in Zim. Most of my siblings actually are in Zim. So just spending time with my siblings for me was, I think those are my fondest memories. So I'm looking forward to going home, like in the next 2 weeks or something.
Oh, really?
Because my parents are having a 35th anniversary.
Wow.
So
okay.
that, for me, that really just being with my mom and dad and my siblings who I adore.
Yeah.
Those are my fondest memories, yes.
And your parents, what impact have they had on
Me.
on you as an individual?
So
If you were to look back.
My dad is a technician, but my mom is a teacher.
Right.
She forced me to read.
Yes,
I think she had that impact on me, because I wasn't, like I said, the A student, but she forced me to read. Reading was a big part of my culture.
Yes.
I didn't even love it.
Yeah.
She would have like a library for you, dictionary at such a young age, and you would be like, why is you putting me through so much? But now that I've grown up, I love reading. It's just, and now I'm trying to pass it on to my kids.
Yes.
They do complain sometimes when I buy them a book present, or even some of my my sister's kids. But that is really, they shaped me to be who I am.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
And I think besides my parents being the firstborn, I think that is really kind of how I live my life. I'm always.
But that's also a huge responsibility, right? I mean, when you speak to a lot of people that come from Zimbabwe and various other African countries, number one, parents are always very strict. Religion is always like a very important part of the culture and growing up, very similar to us as well in South Africa. But but it's something that's really pressed on. But also having parents as teachers. Both my parents were teachers, and I remember everybody was getting the BMX when we were growing up. Remember those red, yellow, and blue BMXs,
Yes.
right? So everybody would get BMXs, and kids would be running up and down and. I got Reader's Digest and Britannica encyclopedias for Christmas.
Definitely.
But I'm thankful for it now because it's easy for me to pick up a book and read, 30, 40 pages at a go. Langa spoke about the impact that your parents had, but when you look back at those years, what are some of the things that you can say? If my parents hadn't done this, I might have come out differently. What was that environment like for you, especially also being the older sister?
So I think if my parents had not forced me to go to boarding school, I think I would have turned out differently.
Right.
Because I went to a mission school, Anglican Catholic school in Zim. It was a big thing. Almost everyone went to boarding school.
Right.
I think some of my friends who went to boarding school grade 4 when they were pretty young, or grade 1 actually.
Right.
But I went there as a Form 1. So Form 1 here is grade 8. That's when I went to boarding school.
Standard 6.
Yeah, I was calculating.
Standard
It was not
six.
calculating.
So we do primary.
It's not make sure.
7, primary up to grade 7, and then we then go to Form 1.
Yes, yeah.
So from Form 1 up to 6, so you have 6 more years. For me, going to boarding school, I think that was something that really, 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 really made an impact, because I wanted to, go to a day scholar, have fun, go to parties.
Yes.
But it wasn't an option for me. My mom just bought the uniform. You're going to school next week, no discussion. So I think that for me, if I didn't have that, I would have never then... even finished I don't think the first degree actually,
Right.
or even qualified for it.
Before we continue, thank you for following the Live Beyond podcast. Please press the subscribe button, and in the section below, leave your comments. Let us know what you think about the podcast and any future guests you would like to see. Also, would like to say thank you to our partners and our sponsors for making this platform possible. And we continue.
After my first degree, I did. I'm going to practice a little bit. Quite an interesting world. I remember my interview, I always say to my interviewers, I don't want to do criminal law. I don't want to represent rapists or anyone accused of rape. So for me, I didn't want to do criminal law. That is something that I did know. But of course, when you practice, the reality of it is, especially in Eastern Cape, they're like small law firms, most of them.
Yeah.
You actually have to do everything from rape cases to divorce, which was really...
was it fun?
No.
No.
Divorce cases and maintenance.
Oh, yeah.
And my boss used to say, you're too kind, because I would feel sorry for, even though, let's say in the maintenance case, let's say the guy is my client.
Yeah.
And he's refusing to give this woman money to raise their kid. I would always try to talk to my client and say, just add an extra one. I was so lenient to the other side.
Right.
Which usually they would say, the best lawyer is supposed to make sure that their client pays as less.
Yes, as little as possible.
Yes, as possible. And sometimes I couldn't do that. It wasn't my nature. It just wasn't part of who I was. So practice was a little bit difficult in some of those, the criminal maintenance, family kind of cases. And I actually did love a lot of corporate cases. I thought that was a little bit, not too many emotions in that kind of space.
Yeah. So
I did like that. But I always loved research. I think I always loved books.
Yes.
So when I did my master's, I got a cum laude for my master's, that's when it was like a confirmation that this is actually what you're supposed to do.
Can you explain to McFarlane what a cum laude is? I think he's heard about the term, but I'm not sure that he understands.
Cum laude.
Oh, Lloyd.
You got it all with distinctions, right?
Yeah, so a master's you do the distinction, but for mine, I was doing a master's in research. So just 2 years of you research on a specific topic and you write So you have like a dissertation, I'm sure you know about
Yeah.
that. So, and then I got a distinction for that. So that was kind of confirmation that actually I do better when I speak, when I write than when I speak. I don't
Right.
I feel like when you give me a gel pen specific, not just any pen, a gel pen and paper, that is where I feel like I just
Yeah.
pull myself out.
What
better.
was your research on, your thesis?
So it was international trade law. It was basically looking at how friendly the trade agreements, the international trade agreements, are to developing countries in our interests. Because if you think of it, most of those were actually drawn up way before we became independent countries
Right.
by foreign, foreign parties. So it's always interesting to see these systems are not made with us in mind. So how do we fit into that? How have the international courts actually interpreted this, some of these agreements and disputes surrounding that? So that really was what my focus was on, international trade law.
Right. Yeah. So it's would you say that it's skewed against we're talking about the development of the continent and Africa, and from a trade perspective, did you find that it's skewed against Africa?
So I wouldn't say specifically against Africa, but I think one of the findings of that research was more of technical capacity.
Okay.
It's not that it's really skewed against us, because we lack technical capacity a lot of the times, it then becomes skewed against us. So yes, it is a little bit skewed against us. We're still a long way to really ensure that we benefit from those agreements and from that order.
Right. When you look at things now, has much changed? Has much changed from the time you wrote that paper to now? Are you seeing any changes when you look at what's happening internationally?
So I do see that there are changes, right? We are getting somewhere, but of course I do worry. Recently I was reading a lot about, space. For example, space law and what's happening in space. And we actually are so behind there.
There's space law.
There's space law. There's a lot of things around potential space mining around, I think SA is an exception, actually. We do have a space program. But actually, most African countries don't have space programs. And people are already launching in space. So you can now think that, yes, we might be catching up on other things, but while we try to catch up, there's a new advancement.
Yeah.
So Sharon, you were chilling at home. You decided, you know what? I'm not going to watch this thing. I don't have time for Mzansi Magic. Let me just quickly read about space law. Sharon.
Well, I do watch Mzansi Magic a lot.
While reading space law.
While reading space law. So it's interesting. I love I love knowledge, basically.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to learn.
Yeah.
Out there, yes. Yeah.
But your career has taken a different direction.
A different turn, actually.
From where you started, and it's not gone into space or criminal law, corporate law.
No, it hasn't. It has gone into public health law.
Tell us a bit about that.
Which is quite interesting, because I did my PhD in I was looking at what they call plain packaging of tobacco products. So it's like putting graphics on cigarette packs.
Yes.
And it's like removing all the trademarks, the fancy logo designs on tobacco packs.
And this is all in your spare time?
No,
is this part of your
PhD?
work?
It's my PhD. Yes. So that is what basically, when you want to do a PhD, you kind of like, you have to keep reading, because you have to find something that just speaks to you.
Yeah.
So when I first came across that, I was like, okay,
yeah.
What about intellectual property? What about their trademarks? What about this, that? That's what got me into that space. I wasn't going there trying to be a tobacco control advocate. I was just going there to criticize this law, criticize the development, shut it down, almost like, from a scholarly perspective. That is how I got into tobacco control.
So what you're saying is that initially the removal of trademarks and putting warnings and graphics on packages, and your initial standpoint was that it's not going to work.
Yeah, for me, it was just going to be illegal,
right,
unconstitutional.
Right.
It would be infringing on intellectual property.
Yes.
Because if you think of, Marlboro, right, you think of the rooftop. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I know you guys are fitness people, so probably you've never
we used to smoke. We used to smoke.
So
We've been
with
there.
Marlboro, you'd see, a Camel, you'd see the Camel.
Yes.
So all those are trademarks.
Yes.
Okay.
And, and they're worth a lot of money.
Yes.
Just think of Coca-Cola. So for me, I was like, okay, how can someone just remove the Nike the swoosh mark
From what they're selling.
From what they're selling.
And how can that be lawful?
How can that be lawful? Because right now, if that measure is passed in South Africa, it's one of the measures of the bill that we'll talk about. Basically, all the cigarette packs will look alike, and they'll have graphic warning. Instead of saying smoking causes cancer, it will show you what that means as a picture with cancer. And then the Marlboro will just now be in a normal font, depending from country to country, of course. But Australia was the first to do that around 2011, and it did that successfully. So that is what I was looking at from a South African perspective, perspective, to look at whether that would be constitutional or not. Because I thought that would never be constitutional, just from my maybe being naive or just from being a normal person.
Yes.
I thought it wouldn't be effective. It would violate so much laws. Why do that? I didn't know why would someone want to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
We used to smoke. I used to smoke. Just over probably 15 years ago, I stopped. I used to smoke everything pretty much. I don't think that I had any affinity to any brand, probably to an extent, but not to a very large extent. I mean, if you go and buy cigarettes now, if you don't have money, you're buying these drawers, you don't really have a choice.
Yes.
But anyway, that's just as a side. And so you then you started digging.
Yeah,
and you started researching
why are we having plain packaging? Why is this even necessary? So for me, there was almost like a eye opener, because I had to learn about the history of tobacco, the history of the tobacco companies, how they've lied to people, how they've targeted kids, how they've denied that nicotine is addictive, and all these years of deception. That was, for me, I really was disappointed. I mean, why would someone get away with that? But then again, maybe we can talk about the same for different corporates. So that was eye-opening for me. And actually, when I finished my PhD, my finding was that it is constitutional. Yes, it does violate rights.
But everything is constitutional.
But there are justifications for that. So yes, you can limit other people's rights as long as you have justifications. And I think in this case, the state would really have justifications. Yeah. And if you look at plain packaging, a lot of countries have been challenged in court by tobacco companies for this.
Yeah.
The UK, Australia.
Yeah.
In all the challenges, the state is always one.
So let's just put that into context, right? So there's a new tobacco bill that is currently in process. It's currently at a stage where public submissions are being made, right, before it's presented in front of Parliament. Is that correct?
So it's a very long process. With democracy, they have to ensure that there's public participation. Currently, they're now going in provinces to hear what people think before the National Assembly actually makes a decision. Of course, we're still long way even when that finishes.
Yeah. What is it hoping to achieve?
It's hoping to really reduce the number of people who smoke. And then, of course, we can't also forget the non-smokers, trying to protect the smokers as well from second-hand smoke. That really is what the bill is about. So, yes, so there are different components of the bill, but all of them, they're supposed to all work together to basically do that. Reduce smoking, reduce initiation, and basically to just improve livelihoods.
Yeah.
Society, economy, think of any other way of our environment, all the other things.
Before we continue,
people's lives.
Thank you for following the Live Beyond podcast. Please press the subscribe button. And in the section below, leave your comments. Let us know what you think about the podcast and any future guests you would like to see. Also, would like to say thank you to our partners and our sponsors for making this platform possible. And we continue.
Take us through then the importance of the bill. What will this mean, number one, for smokers? What would it mean for children? And what would it mean for the industry?
Okay, so I would say in a perfect world, people would live freely and be able to make choices, right? So someone would choose whether to smoke or whether not to smoke. But actually, we don't live in a perfect world.
Yes.
There are always influences and factors beyond the choice that you make. So this, I think, the area that the bill is trying to really make an impact in reducing the number of kids who start to smoke. We know that, for example, 7 out of 10 smokers, 70% of them start smoking as kids, 10, sometimes 9.
So, Doc, the advocacy work, how did you get involved with that, and why do you feel so passionately about it?
Also, yes. So after doing my PhD, I decided to get into advocacy work, because I think there is still a bridge that needs to be closed between academic work, a lot of research, and actually impacting policy. That is really what made me do that, and I believe that we definitely do make differences, because I think if people really get more information, if they know, for example, what the tobacco industry is and how they manipulate you as a child, I think that really makes you make a better decision. And I think policy is important because it helps create an environment that is friendly for people to be able to make healthier choices. Because we don't live in a perfect world. Kids don't just smoke because they want to smoke. If you think of, I think you guys are healthy people, so you'd know even in nutrition what you eat. People don't choose what to eat. They actually bigger corporate players who actually are manipulating what you choose to do. So policy is important to try and curtail that, to ensure that we don't have an industry which is manipulating or targeting kids specifically.
So just to give us a bit of context, what is it that you do in terms of your work towards policy and tobacco?
And what are some of the organizations she works with in that? Yeah.
Yes. So a big part of what we do is public awareness. We try and raise awareness around tobacco. We now have vaping, for example, e-cigarettes, to ensure that the public is able to make better choices. We also advocate for stronger policies. So we really push for strong policies, try to hold government accountable as well. Because it's their role to protect citizens of create an environment that is conducive. We also also run a quit line on every cigarette pack. There's a number behind there, an 011 number, and that is a quit line which goes through to our offices. So that's really the key part of the work that we do. And then obviously there's a little bit of legal as well, because we really try and hold institutions accountable legally as well. Because they are, for example, the tobacco industry will be violating human rights if it targets kids. At the same time, government, if it doesn't come up with better policies to protect people, it's also not adhering to its constitutional.
How have you found that battle though? Because when you speak to corporates, they've got lawyers. They'll make the time. They'll put teams together so that they can put on that fight. And you're not just fighting one little cigarette company; it's an entire industry, right? And then you've got government on the other hand, which has so many other issues to deal with, especially within the Department of Health, because this speaks directly to them. Are they meeting you halfway? Are they understanding the work that you're doing? And what's that relationship like?
Yeah, so with government, yes, sometimes we do meet halfway. I think it's easier for the Ministry of Health, for example, because they would understand the mandate. And it's, for example, this bill is their bill. It's within their purview. But it's difficult for the other ministries, really, because they sometimes have converging interests. So instead of it being a whole of government approach, sometimes there's a silo approach within government, which really makes it very difficult. And then in terms of the tobacco industry, they will never be meeting halfway with the tobacco industry. And as you know, they have the money. They have the economic and the political muscle as well. They do a lot of lobbying as well behind the doors. For the tobacco industry, there's no meeting halfway. But I think fighting for good eventually. Yes, the tobacco industry will try and delay things, water it down, but eventually, such policies will be implemented.
Yeah. How does tobacco impact South Africa from a population and a society health perspective, and also from an economic perspective to the government?
Yeah. So some people used to say tobacco is legal by accident. It really is by accident. If people knew what they knew now, it probably wouldn't be a legal product. Because over 30,000 South Africans die every year from tobacco-linked illnesses. The country loses 42 billion every year from treating those illnesses, from lost productivity, from premature deaths. So people would link tobacco to be more of a lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's a lifestyle issue, but actually it is an epidemic. Because
you also hear people that, no, I don't necessarily smoke. I'm a social smoker. I only smoke when there's, when I'm having a drink or something like that, or I'm at a party.
So and then the tobacco industry will also come back and say, but as a tobacco industry, we're creating jobs, we're employing people, and we're contributing towards the economy, right?
Yes. So obviously, for example, tobacco companies in South Africa pay about 14 billion, 14 billion in taxes. And actually, if you look at those taxes, those are cigarette smokers are the ones who are paying that tax.
Yeah.
So they're just collecting, they're a tax collector basically.
Right.
And then if you compare that to 42 billion
That's been spent on health and
that is being spent on health,
yeah.
then you ask yourself, why is this industry actually still up and running? And that now that's where you go to the politics of it.
Right. Yeah.
There's a lot of lobbying behind. So globally, yes, there's a lot of massive steps being taken to try and take down the behavior of smoking. But it is hard. Now you have habli-bablis, which is still tobacco. Now you have vaping, which is not tobacco, but it's still the same manufacturers. The big four, really, of the world are the ones behind the e-cigarettes. So it is hard because they also innovate. They will keep innovating. Because if you think of it, I think Marlboro used to fund Formula One. And now Vuz is funding the McLaren for Formula One. So it's almost like reinventing the wheel as well. So it is hard. It can be a little bit discouraging because the industry, I guess, it outnumbers us obviously on all fronts. But I think fighting for the good is important.
Who are some of those people helping you fight for the good? I know there's Tobacco Free for Kids and various other organizations, but who are some of those sort of organizations that you're working with quite closely to try and make your voice heard?
So we at the National Council Against Smoking, we work with the Cancer Association of South Africa, we work with Heart and Stroke Foundation, South African Tobacco Free Youth Forum, we have what we call Africa Tobacco Industry Monitoring and Policy Research, we have global partners like the Campaign for Tobacco Free Kids. So it really has become a massive movement with corporate accountability, so many organizations, and many of them are steeped in public health, human rights, social justice, and recently now we have a lot of environmental issues going into place. For example, with vaping, it's becoming one of the biggest environmental issues. Even if you think of the cigarette butt, is the single most discarded plastic item on earth.
No.
And it doesn't serve any purpose. It doesn't help the smoker. It doesn't, it's plastic. So all these fronts. So tobacco is not a public health issue. It's really an issue for everyone. I think like many other issues, and it really needs a transdisciplinary approach. And even if it's government, it has to be a whole of government approach for them to be able to tackle the problem.
So is there anything else that if you were to go to the tobacco industry and say, you'd rather focus on doing this, I'm sure they use vast pieces of land for plantation, and farming, and they have factories. What are the alternative industries or sectors that they could go into?
I think that's really difficult for the tobacco industry, which sells death. I think that's hard because currently, for example, WHO, what they've realized is that there's an irreconcilable conflict between the aims of that industry.
Right.
Because they can only make money by hooking the next customer.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And that is really unfortunate. But I think there are a lot of things that people can do good in this world instead of trying to hook more nicotine addicts.
Right, yeah. And what are some of the countries that are, from a legislative perspective, that you would say have actually advanced in terms of from a tobacco control perspective?
Yeah, I think countries like Uganda.
Right.
Yeah, in Uganda they have done well, and obviously with countries like Australia, the Western world really have done much better in terms of tobacco control. Yeah. So African legislation is still a little bit weaker, and because of the issues that we have, like unemployment, lower political will, this has become the space that the tobacco industry is targeting.
Really?
And as you know, Africa is a youth bulge, right? Most of the population is younger, so Africa is the future.
Exactly.
But also for tobacco manufacturers, they also see it as the future. So I think there are a lot of countries. The Western world has really done well, but developing countries, we still have a long way to ensure that we see the industry as it is. Yeah.
So, Doctor, all the work that you're doing, all the organizations that you're working with, and everything that you're trying to get right, what is the end goal? What does the world look like in your eyes if everything comes right in terms of all that you're advocating for?
Yeah, I think what would really go to the vision is a world free of tobacco, a world free of nicotine addiction in any form. That is really the world that we should be looking at, and I think it can be done, because tobacco is an invention. It wasn't there forever. So a tobacco-free world, yes, a world where 10-year-olds are not smoking to be cool or vaping to look cool or fit into society. I think that would be the ideal. And I think a world where governments and I think society starts holding some of these corporates accountable, like really accountable.
Yeah.
I think in the US we've seen them being sued, but in Africa it's as if the tobacco companies are good corporate citizens, of which we know that they are not.
Yeah.
So I think that's the kind of world I see, and I think it is possible. Yes, it might be hard to get there, but eventually, get there.
Yeah. Well, it's difficult. I think generally the law favors those with the deep pockets.
Yeah.
But I think with people like you who do advocacy work and who give off their time to try and change the world for a better good and look after the health of the citizenry, especially young people who are the future of this country, we're very grateful to you, and we hope to wish you all the best.
Yeah, keep fighting the good fight, man. Keep
Please
fighting
stay
the good
strong.
fight.
Don't give up. We know it's difficult.
No, we won't give up. I would just invite everyone to join the advocacy, but we won't.
Yeah.
We're not dissuaded.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks so much. I appreciate you for joining us.
Yeah, Doctor, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And catch us on the next one, guys. Live beyond.
All right. Thank you so much.
It was stressful.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Amazing. Awesome. You're even sweating.
Yeah.